The hydraulic hiss of the airlock cycling was the only sound in the cargo bay of the Anvil. It was a sharp, aggressive noise like a whip cracking, signaling the end of the transaction. Ronin stood with his boots planted on the grated metal deck. His arms crossed over a chest that had stopped growing wider about 30 years ago, but had only gotten harder. The air in the bay was cold, smelling of recycled oxygen and heavy grease. Above, the old yellow containment lights buzzed with a low electrical hum, casting long, sickly shadows against the scarred bulkhead walls. It wasn't a pretty ship. It didn't have the smooth curves of a Federation cruiser or the polished chrome of a diplomat's yacht. It was a hauler. It was built of iron and spite, much like its captain. The inner airlock door slid open. Lord Vrak didn't step inside. He stood on the threshold, his expensive silk robes fluttering in the atmospheric exchange. He looked at the grease-stained floor of Ronin's ship with a sneer of absolute disgust. "Payment," Vrak said. He gestured to the two guards behind him. They shoved a hover sled across the threshold. It scraped against the metal decking with a sound that set teeth on edge. On the sled lay a woman. She was bound in rough canvas, her body small and still. Ronin didn't look at Vrak. He looked at the sled. He looked at the way the woman was tied. It was a sloppy job. A man who knows his knots respects his cargo. This was just cruelty. "We agreed on credits," Ronin said. His voice was a low rumble, blending in with the vibration of the ship's idling reactor. "Circumstances change," Vrak replied, checking a device on his wrist already bored. "She is the High Princess Thalira, or she was before the coup. Now, she is broken. Useless legs, useless spirit. My brother's daughter is inconvenient to keep alive, but politically difficult to execute." Vrak looked up, his pale eyes meeting Ronin's. "Take her, dump her in a mining colony. Throw her out the airlock once you break orbit. I don't care. Consider the debt settled." Ronin looked at the alien lord. He'd seen men like Vrak before. In the trenches of the border wars and the corporate boardrooms of the core systems. They were all the same. They thought power came from what you could buy or who you could kill. They never understood that real power comes from what you can endure. "Get off my ship," Ronin said. Vrak laughed, a high, thin sound. "Pleasure doing business, scavenger." The airlock cycled shut. The heavy thud of the locking clamps echoed through the hull. Ronin was alone. Just him, the humming ship, and the bundle on the sled. He walked over to the wall panel and punched the sequence to seal the bay. The yellow lights flickered as the main reactor draws power, the floor beneath his boots vibrating with a reassuring rhythm. This was his world. Cold steel, warm engines, and silence. He approached the sled. He pulled a serrated knife from his belt, a tool, not a weapon, and sliced the canvas straps. The woman gasped as the pressure released. She pulled herself up, the canvas falling away to reveal a torn, dirty dress that had once been royal finery. Her skin was a pale emerald, but it was bruised. Her hair, silver like starlight, was matted with grime. But it was her legs that drew the eye. They ended just below the knee in cauterized, jagged stumps. She didn't cry, she didn't beg. She looked up at Ronin, her violet eyes burning with a mixture of fear and absolute, unadulterated rage. She pushed herself backward, dragging her body across the cold metal of the sled, trying to put distance between them. "Stay back," she hissed. Her voice was raspy, unused. "If you are going to kill me, do it from there. I will not let a human touch me." Ronin didn't move, he just watched her. He saw the way her hands gripped the edge of the sled, knuckles white. He saw the set of her jaw. Most men would look at her and see a victim. They'd see a broken thing that needed pity. But if you've ever seen a soldier try to stand up after taking a hit that should have kept him down, you know what Ronin saw. He didn't see a cripple. He saw a fighter who just needed a reload. "I'm not going to kill you," Ronin said flatly. He sheathed the knife. "And I'm not going to touch you unless I have to. Can you move?" "My legs," she spat the words out. "I have eyes," Ronin cut her off. "I asked if you can move. Your arms work, your spine works. Can you get off the sled?" She blinked, surprised by the coldness of his tone. She expected abuse or sympathy. She didn't know how to handle indifference. "Yes, then get to the lift, we're breaking orbit. If you're not strapped in, the G-forces will paste you against the bulkhead." He turned his back on her. It was a test. He walked toward the heavy cargo elevator at the far end of the bay. He listened to the sounds behind him. The scrape of fabric on metal, the grunt of exertion, the heavy breathing. She was dragging herself. Ronin punched the call button for the lift. He waited. He didn't look back. He let her struggle. Not because he was cruel, but because dignity isn't given, it's earned. A man gives you a hand, he takes your pride. You pull yourself up, you keep it. She reached the lift just as the doors opened. She was sweating, trembling, but she was there. Ronin looked down at her. Good, he stepped in. She dragged herself in after him. The lift ascended, the gears grinding with the familiar song of the old ship. The yellow light of the cargo bay gave way to the dimmer, red-hued emergency lighting of the corridor deck. The air here was warmer, smelling faintly of coffee and ozone. Where are we going? She asked, pulling herself into a sitting position against the wall of the lift. Flight deck, Ronin said. Ship doesn't fly itself. Why didn't you throw me out? She asked. Vrak said I was useless. Ronin looked at the numbers ticking up on the lift display. Vrak is a fool. He throws away tools because he doesn't know how to use them. On this ship, nothing is useless. Everything has a purpose, even the scrap metal. The lift doors opened onto the bridge. It was a cramped space dominated by the pilot's chair and a chaotic array of screens, switches, and analog dials. It looked like the cockpit of an old bomber, not a starship. Wires hung from the ceiling, and the main viewport was scratched and pitted from years of asteroid dust. Ronin stepped over to the pilot's chair and sat down. He began flipping switches. The engine hummed deep into a roar. Strap into the co-pilot seat, Ronin ordered, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. Thalira looked at the seat. It was high off the deck. I cannot climb that, Ronin paused. He sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to come from the bottom of his lungs. He stood up and walked over to her. Before she could protest, he bent down and scooped her up. She stiffened, her hands instinctively pushing against his chest. His leather jacket was cold, but the arm beneath her knees was rock solid. He didn't fondle her, he didn't linger. He handled her like she was a crate of munitions, careful but firm. He deposited her in the seat and buckled the 4-point harness over her chest. Don't get used to it, he grunted. He sat back down and engaged the thrusters. The anvil shuddered as the docking clamps released. The view of the station spun away, replaced by the black curtain of space and the distant burning stars. We need to clear the sector, Ronin said, watching the radar scope. Vrak doesn't leave loose ends. He'll send a patrol to make sure we had an accident. He sent 3 interceptors, Thalira said softly. Ronin froze. His hand hovered over the throttle. He turned to look at her. How do you know that? I saw the flight manifest on the sled before they covered me, she said. Her voice was steady now. Vrak isn't just cheap, he's paranoid. He hired the Red Sun mercenaries. Ronin cursed under his breath. The Red Sun professionals, fast ships. As if on cue, the proximity alarm on the console began to scream, a harsh rhythmic blare that filled the small cockpit. Beep, 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 radar contact! Ronin shouted, his hands flying across the controls. 3 bogies closing fast. Attack vectors! The ship rocked violently as a plasma bolt clipped the shields. The lights in the cockpit flickered and died, replaced by the spinning red emergency strobes. The smell of ozone spiked, a fuse blowing somewhere in the dashboard. Shields down to 60%, Ronin yelled over the alarm. He banked the ship hard to port. The metal groaned, a screaming complaint from the hull. Thalira watched him, she watched his hands. They were a blur of motion, fighting the yoke, adjusting the fuel mix, rerouting power. But there was only one of him. I can't shake them, Ronin growled. This tub is too heavy. I need to balance the shield output while I maneuver. But the stabilizers are manual. Another hit. Sparks showered down from the ceiling panel, landing on Ronin's jacket. The ship lurched, throwing them both against their harnesses. We're going to die, Thalira whispered. Not today, Ronin snapped. But I can't fly this and shoot at the same time. Not in this ship, he looked at her. He looked at the empty neural interface port on the dashboard in front of her. It was an old system, a remnant from when the Anvil had been a military dropship. It allowed a co-pilot to link directly with the ship's computer, managing systems with their mind while the pilot flew with his hands. But it required a direct connection. Can you shoot? Ronin asked. I was trained in the academy, she stammered. But I cannot reach the controls. You don't need to reach them. Ronin reached under the console and pulled out a dusty wired helmet. It looked like a crown of thorns made of fiber optic cables. This is a neural link. It bypasses the body, connects your cortex to the ship's targeting array. You think it, the ship does it? He held it out to her. Put it on. She stared at the helmet. A neural link? With a human ship, it's invasive. It requires total surrender to the machine. It requires trust. Ronin roared as another explosion rocked the ship. Look at me. She looked at him. In the flashing red light of the cockpit, his face was grim, sweat beading on his forehead, but his eyes were clear. There was no panic there, only focus. There are moments in life when you have to decide if you're a victim or a survivor. Victims wait for someone to save them. Survivors do what needs to be done, no matter how much it hurts. If you've ever had to make a choice that terrified you because the alternative was giving up, you know exactly what was going through her mind. If we don't fight back, we are dead, Ronin said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. I can fly her, but I need you to be the gunner. I need you to be the queen they're afraid of. Thalira looked at her useless legs. Then she looked at the helmet. She reached out, her hands trembling, and took it. She pulled the helmet over her head. The cables tightened. Initiating link, Ronin said, flipping a switch on his console. Click, the cockpit vanished for Thalira. Suddenly, she wasn't in a chair. She wasn't a cripple, she was the ship. She could feel the cold vacuum of space against her skin, which was now the hull of the anvil. She could feel the heat of the engines like a fire in her belly. She could feel the 3 enemy ships behind them, not as blips on a radar, but as buzzing flies around her head. And she could feel Ronin. The link wasn't just to the ship. It bridged the pilot and the gunner. She felt his mind brush against hers. It was like hitting a wall of granite. His mind was disciplined, rigid, scarred by years of hard decisions. But beneath the hardness, she felt a fierce protective heat. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was afraid of failing her. I can feel you, she whispered, her voice echoing through the ship's speakers. Focus. Ronin's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Don't get lost in the sensation. Focus on the enemy. You have the turrets. Send them to hell. Thalira reached out with her mind. She didn't have legs, but she had thrusters. She didn't have arms, but she had dual rotary cannons. For the first time in months, she wasn't weak. She was 50,000 tons of steel and fusion fire. Target locked, she said. In the cockpit, Ronin watched the targeting reticle snap onto the lead mercenary ship with a speed no human hand could match. It was instant perfect. Fire, Ronin commanded. Thalira thought the word fire. The ship shuddered as the dorsal cannons unleashed a stream of depleted uranium slugs. The sound was a dull thump-thump-thump that vibrated through the floorboards, straight up Ronin's boots and into his chest. The lead mercenary ship evaporated. 1 second it was there. The next it was a cloud of expanding gas and debris. Good hit, Ronin shouted, banking the ship hard to the right to dodge return fire. 2 left, they're splitting up. Pincer movement. I see them, Thalira said. Her voice in the comms was different now. Stronger. They are trying to flank us. Amateur tactics. She was analyzing the battlefield faster than the computer could. She was a royal commander, born and bred for war, finally given a weapon that matched her intellect. Take the one on the left, Ronin ordered. I'll ram the one on the right. Ram him? Thalira's shock rippled through the neural link. Ronin felt it, a spike of fear mixed with exhilaration. Trust me, Ronin gritted out, slamming the throttle forward. Hold the shields forward, put all power to the prow. Understood. Inside the neural space, their minds synchronized. Ronin flew the ship with the instincts of a brawler, dirty and aggressive. Thalira managed the systems with the precision of a surgeon. He was the muscle, she was the nerve. They turned the anvil toward the oncoming fighter. The enemy pilot swerved, panic evident in his maneuver, but it was too late. Ronin didn't flinch. Crunch. The impact was sickening. The screech of tearing metal screamed through the cockpit walls. The enemy fighter clipped their wing and spun out of control, spiraling into the void until its reactor went critical. Boom. 1 left, Ronin breathed, wrestling the yoke. Where is he? Above us, Thalira said. Diving, he's charging a torpedo. I can't bring the nose up fast enough. Ronin yelled. The hydraulics were whining, protesting the abuse. You don't have to, Thalira replied. I am rerouting power to the ventral thrusters. Prepare for a hard stop. Before Ronin could ask what she meant, she did it. She cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering jets at full blast. The ship stopped dead in space. The sudden deceleration slammed Ronin against his harness, knocking the wind out of him. But the enemy fighter, expecting them to continue their trajectory, overshot. He flew right past their canopy, close enough that Ronin could see the pilot's helmet. Now, Ronin gasped. Thalira didn't hesitate. She swiveled the turrets 180 degrees, thump. Thump, thump. The last fighter disintegrated. Silence returned to the cockpit. The only sound was the heavy breathing of two people who had just cheated death, and the groaning of cooling metal. The red emergency lights pulsed slowly like a dying heartbeat. Ronin reached up and flipped the master switch. The neural link severed. Thalira slumped in her chair, the helmet sliding sideways. She gasped. The sudden return to her broken body hitting her like a physical blow. The power was gone, the steel skin was gone. She was just flesh and bone again. Ronin unbuckled his harness. He stumbled slightly as he stood up. The G-forces had taken their toll, but he steadied himself on the back of his chair. He walked over to her. She was trembling. Her hands gripped the armrest so hard her knuckles were purple. She whispered. We won. You won, Ronin said. He reached out and gently lifted the helmet from her head. His hand brushed her cheek. It was an accident, or maybe it wasn't. His skin was rough, hers was soft, but both were hot with adrenaline. He looked at her, really looked at her in the dim red light of the cockpit. He didn't see the stumps of her legs. He saw the fire in her eyes that was slowly fading back into pain. I felt you, she said, looking up at him. In the link, you aren't just a mechanic. Ronin stepped back, retreating into his stoicism like a turtle into a shell. I'm whatever the ship needs me to be. He turned away, checking the damage readouts on the main screen. We're leaking coolant. Hyperdrive is offline. We're drifting in deep space. We are alive, Thalira said. Her voice was stronger than it had been when she boarded. Yeah, Ronin muttered, for now. He turned back to face her. But that link, it's a two-way street. You saw inside my head too, so you know I don't give charity. I know, she said, good. Because we have a lot of work to do. I can fix the engines, but I can't fix the flight computer. It's fried. You're going to have to stay in the link to navigate us to the next system. Stay in the link? She looked at the helmet. It is exhausting and intimate. It's necessary, Ronin said. He crossed his arms. Unless you want to wait here for Vrak's second wave. She looked at the helmet, then at her legs. For the first time, she didn't look at them with shame. She looked at them as an inconvenience, a problem to be solved. I will do it, she said. But not for you. For me. Ronin cracked a smile. It was a small thing, barely moving his mustache, but it was there. Suit yourself, Your Highness. Just keep the ship steady while I'm in the engine room. He walked toward the hatch. He paused at the door, his hand on the frame. The yellow light from the corridor framed his silhouette. Broad shoulders, heavy boots, a man built for burdens. And Thalira? She looked up. Nice shooting. He stepped through the door, leaving her alone in the cockpit. The red lights faded, replaced by the auxiliary yellow floods. The ship hummed around her. It wasn't just a machine anymore. It was an extension of herself. And somewhere in the back of the ship, amidst the grease and the noise, was a man who had given her back her claws. Most people think loyalty is about agreeing with someone. It's not. Loyalty is about knowing the worst parts of someone, their fear, their anger, their broken pieces, and standing by them anyway. In that cockpit, amidst the smell of burnt wiring and victory, a bond was formed. Not of romance, not yet, but of iron. The engine room of the Anvil was a metallic hellscape of steam and noise. It sat in the belly of the ship, a cramped corridor of pipes and spinning turbines that smelled of burning ozone and sweat. Ronin was waist-deep in the access hatch of the main reactor. His wrench, a heavy rusted piece of iron that looked more like a weapon than a tool, clamped onto the coolant valve. He grunted, the muscles in his back corded like steel cables as he forced the stuck valve to turn. Clang. The metal gave way. A jet of superheated steam hissed out, missing his face by inches. Ronin didn't flinch. He just wiped the condensation from his brow with a greasy forearm. Reactor is stable. He growled into the comms unit clipped to his collar. But she's running hot, don't push her past 80%. Thalira's voice came back, not through the speaker, but through the ship's internal address system. It sounded different now, composed, authoritative. Understood, Ronin. But we have a problem. Define problem. Sensors are picking up a gravitational anomaly. Massive signature, it's a dreadnought. Ronin froze. He looked at the reactor core pulsing with a rhythmic blue light. A dreadnought. A capital ship. That wasn't a patrol. That was an execution squad. Vrak wasn't taking chances anymore. Ronin climbed out of the hatch, his boots ringing on the grate. He grabbed a rag, wiping the worst of the grease from his hands. I'm coming up. He moved through the corridors of the ship. The yellow emergency lights were still humming, casting long, flickering shadows against the bulkheads. The ship felt alive around him. He could feel the vibrations in the floor plates. That was Thalira. She was idling the thrusters, keeping the ship constantly moving, oscillating the shield's frequencies. She was learning fast. When he reached the cockpit, the mood had changed. It wasn't the panic of the dogfight earlier. It was the cold silence of a tomb. Thalira sat in the co-pilot's chair, the neural helmet still crowning her head, wires cascading down her shoulders like a techno-organic veil. She didn't turn to look at him, she couldn't. Her mind was projected outward, seeing the universe through the ship's sensors. On the main screen, she said. Ronin looked at the scratched viewport. Out in the black, a shape blocked out the stars. It was a jagged wedge of black steel, bristling with gun batteries. The Sovereign Vrak's flagship. They are hailing us, Thalira said. Put it on screen. The static cleared, revealing Vrak's face. He looked smug, sitting on his throne on the bridge of the massive warship. You are persistent, scavenger, Vrak sneered. And you, niece. I see you found a new toy to play with. Surrender, Thalira said. Her voice wasn't hers. It was synthesized through the anvil's comms array, deep and resonant. This is your only warning, Uncle, Vrak laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. Warning, look at you. You are floating in a garbage scow. I have a dreadnought, I have a legion. I am going to vaporize you, and then I'm going to have dinner. Cut the feed, Ronin said. The screen went black. Ronin looked at Thalira. We can't fight that thing. Its shields are too thick. Our cannons won't even scratch the paint. I know, Thalira replied. But we don't need to destroy it. We just need to break Vrak. How? He's sitting behind 10 meters of armor. He is, Thalira said. But his men aren't, they are conscripts. Mercenaries. They follow him because they fear him and because he pays them. If we take that away, he stands alone. Ronin leaned against the pilot's console, crossing his arms. He looked at this broken woman in the chair, strapped in, unable to walk, yet plotting a coup from the cockpit of a hauler. You have a plan, Ronin stated. I have the royal codes, she said. The neural link gives me direct access to the subspace transceiver. If I can get close enough inside his jamming field, I can broadcast. Not just a message, I can broadcast the truth. His ledger, his thefts, the orders to sacrifice his own troops. Close enough means point-blank range, Ronin warned. Inside the firing solution of his main batteries. It's suicide. It's leadership, she corrected. Ronin stared at her. He saw the tremble in her hands, the sweat on her neck. She was terrified. But she was doing it anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's looking at the odds, knowing you're probably going to lose and tightening your belt anyway because it's the right thing to do. There's a certain kind of respect that only exists between two people who have agreed to walk into the fire together. Ronin sat down in the pilot's chair. He strapped in. The leather creaked. All right, Your Highness, Ronin grunted. You handle the talking, I'll handle the flying. But if we die, I'm docking it from your pay. Agreed. Ronin slammed the throttle forward. The anvil roared. The ship didn't turn away from the dreadnought. It charged straight at it, shields to maximum forward. Ronin yelled as the dreadnought opened fire. Green bolts of plasma the size of school buses streaked toward them. The cockpit shook violently. Sparks rained down from the overhead panels. The smell of burning insulation filled the air, acrid and sharp. Hold her together, Ronin shouted, wrestling the yoke. The metal of the ship groaned, a screaming protest against the G-forces. I am trying! Thalira's voice was tight with strain. Through the neural link, she felt every hit. Every impact on the shields felt like a punch to her skin. She grit her teeth, tears leaking from under the helmet, but she didn't let go. They wove through the flak field. Ronin flew like a madman, using the debris of the earlier battle as cover, skimming the hull of the massive enemy ship. Closer, Thalira screamed. I need to be within 1 kilometer. We're going to scrape the paint, Ronin growled. A massive explosion rocked the port side. The artificial gravity flickered. For a second, they floated weightless, surrounded by floating tools and coffee cups before crashing back down. We lost the port stabilizer. Ronin checked the readout. We're spinning. No, Thalira said. I have it. In her mind, she grabbed the ship. She forced the thrusters to compensate. It was agony. It felt like holding up a falling building, but she held it. We are in range, she gasped. Broadcasting. Now! She didn't use a microphone. She used her mind. She pushed the data. Terabytes of encrypted ledgers, video logs of Vrak's betrayals, the proof of his cowardice. and shoved it through the subspace transmitter. She screamed with the effort. The lights in the cockpit flared blindingly white. The ship's reactor whined, pushed to the breaking point to power the signal. On the bridge of the dreadnought and on every ship in the fleet, screens flickered. Vrak's face was replaced by documents, bank transfers, orders to liquidate wounded soldiers to save on medical costs. Then Thalira's voice boomed across the open channel. It wasn't the raspy voice of a cripple. It was the voice of a queen, amplified by the fury of the anvil. "Soldiers of the fleet, look at your master. He steals your pensions to buy his silk. He leaves you to die while he hides behind armor. I am Thalira, I am the blood of the founders. Stand down or die for a thief." Silence. For 10 seconds, the guns of the dreadnought kept firing. Then one by one, they stopped. The massive turrets powered down. The green plasma fire ceased. On the dreadnought's bridge, the captain of the guard looked at the screen. He looked at the proof. Then he turned to Vrak. "Lies." Vrak screamed, backing away from his own crew. "Shoot them, I command you." "Command denied," the captain said. Ronin pulled the anvil out of its dive, banking away from the silent behemoth. He checked the sensors. The dreadnought's weapons were cold. They stopped, Ronin breathed. He slumped back in his chair, sweat dripping from his nose. "You did it." Thalira didn't answer. "Thalira?" He looked over. She was slumped forward in her harness, the helmet dangling loosely. "Thalira?" Ronin unbuckled. He ignored the pain in his ribs, probably cracked from the G-forces, and scrambled over to her. He ripped the helmet off. Her eyes were closed, she wasn't breathing. The strain of the broadcast, the neural feedback, it had overloaded her system. "Not on my watch," Ronin growled. He didn't have a med kit. He had his hands, he checked her pulse. Faint, thread-like. He placed his heavy hands on her shoulders and shook her. "Wake up, that is an order. Wake up!" He needed to shock her system. He needed to remind her body it was still alive. He leaned in close, his voice rough with a desperation he hadn't felt in 20 years. "You don't get to quit now. You just took back a kingdom. You don't get to die in a chair." "Breathe!" He slapped her cheek. Lightly but sharply, she gasped. Her eyes flew open, wide and violet, filled with panic. She sucked in air like a drowning woman breaking the surface. "Ronin," she whispered, clutching his jacket. "I'm here," he said, his voice softening. "I've got you, you're safe." She looked around the cockpit. The red emergency lights had faded back to the warm, steady yellow. The ship was humming peacefully. "Vrak?" she asked. Ronin gestured to the main screen. The dreadnought was hailing them. But it wasn't Vrak's face. It was the captain of the guard. He saluted. "The usurper is in custody, High Princess," the captain said. "We await your orders." Thalira looked at the screen. Then she looked at her legs. "Broken, useless. My orders," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "are for the fleet to return to the homeworld. Establish a provisional council. I will remain here." The captain looked confused. "Here?" "On the hauler, but your throne, Majesty." Thalira looked at Ronin. She looked at the scarred metal walls of the cockpit. She looked at the man who had welded the bulkheads, who had carried her when she couldn't walk, who had stood between her and the void. "This is my throne," she said firmly. "Maintain orbit, I will rule from the void." She cut the link. Silence returned to the ship. Just the hum of the engine and the recycling of the air. Ronin stood up. He walked over to the small galley unit built into the wall of the cockpit. He busied himself with the coffee maker. It was a mundane task, simple and grounding. He poured 2 cups of black, steaming liquid. He walked back and handed one to her. She took it, her hand still shaking slightly. "You stayed," she said. "Ship needs a pilot," Ronin shrugged, taking a sip of his own coffee. "And apparently, the galaxy needs a ruler who knows what it's like to bleed." "I cannot go back down there, Ronin," she admitted, looking out the viewport at the stars. "Down there on the planet, they will stare at my legs. They will see the wheelchair. They will pity me here." She tapped the console. "Here I am whole. Here I am a titan. Then we stay," Ronin said simply. He leaned against the console, looking at her. "You know, this ship is falling apart. The hyperdrive needs a rebuild. The hull is fractured. It's going to take a lot of work to keep her flying. I have credits now," she smiled, a genuine, tired smile. "I can hire a mechanic." "You already have one," Ronin said. He looked around the cramped cockpit. It was ugly. It smelled of grease. It was dangerous. But looking at the woman in the chair, the woman who had just brought an armada to its knees with her mind, he realized something. He wasn't a mercenary anymore, he wasn't a drifter. He was the guardian of the Queen. "Course set for the outer rim?" Ronin asked, sitting back in his pilot's chair. "Why the outer rim?" "Because," Ronin said, firing up the sublight engines, "if you're going to rule the galaxy, you should probably see the parts of it that Vrak ignored. The broken parts, the parts that need fixing." Thalira nodded. She put the neural helmet back on, not fully, just resting it on her temples, keeping a light connection to the ship. She reached out and felt the engines purr. She felt Ronin's hands on the controls. "Ready," she said. Ronin pushed the throttle. The anvil turned away from the fleet, away from the politics and the parades, and headed out into the deep, quiet dark. A lot of people think a happy ending means a crown and a parade. But the older you get, the more you realize that peace isn't noise. Peace is a quiet room, a job well done, and someone sitting next to you who understands the silence. They didn't need a palace, they had the ship. And in the cold expanse of space, that was enough.